all, this is Once a Future Gamer and welcome to another Pokemon challenge. Last week we took on Pokemon Yellow with just a single Beedrill and that was fun. Rough at the start but we battled on through and I have no complaints about the end result. Today though we return to Gen 3 and head to Hoenn as we ask the question of whether or not I can beat Pokemon Emerald using just contest moves, the Beauty Edition. Now, there's 5 contest categories in Gen 3 and every move fits into one of the 5 categories. Beautiful, tough, cool, smart and cute. I might do one for each of the 5, but I suppose we'll see just how bad this one is. If we look at the beautiful pool of moves, we've got 65 possible options. Most of them fire, water and ice type moves, which doesn't give us a lot of coverage. There's some normal bug, psychic and grass ones in there, but we're going to struggle to find Pokemon that do get a complete move set out of them all. I mean, I say there's 65 options. Technically there's 64 because one of the options is Sacred Fire, and unless I want to randomise Hoenn as my starter, then that's something I don't have access to. Ditto stuff like Conversion, which I believe is the Porygon line alone. Predictions? I have no idea. This could go any which way. I've done some planning, but I guess it's a case of what we can get at the right time. Start might be rough, I know that much. Just the rules then. In combat, I can only use beautiful category contest moves once the first one has been acquired. The starters don't start with any of them, so I'll have to put that stipulation in. Some HM moves are beautiful category, Surf and Dive, so I can use those in combat, but the others are only permitted as field moves. Only held items and Pokeballs in battle, but I can heal outside of combat. No glitches, exploits or legendary Pokemon. Plus, I've got to have the battle in set mode at all times. Not to make a thing of it, but technically, every challenge I've done recently has that rule. It's just often not relevant in single Pokemon runs. There's no real need for the universal Pokemon randomizer this time, save to do a few tweaks so that I can run without the running shoes, just to save my sanity a little bit. Impossible evolutions are on, but I'm not planning to use anything that evolves via trade. When we get the option to pick a starter, I pick Torchic and move on. We don't start with a beautiful move, but we do get Ember at level 10. So I'm going to have to grind up until we get that, and then we can begin the run. I mean, if I was willing to keep it as a Torchic until level 25, I'd get Fire Spin. But here's the key thing with that. I do not want Fire Spin. It is trash. I nickname the Torchic Dravid and head on. I grind up to level 10 and then we begin the run proper once we get Ember. Until we get another beauty move, this is the only move we can use. The Rock Gym is going to be fun then, huh? Wonder what level I'll have to be to win. Mind you, if I evolve before then, it shouldn't be too bad because I think Combusken does take neutral damage from Rock. Anyway, we go and fight May and her Mudkip. Thankfully, she doesn't have any water or ground moves at this point. Ember doesn't do a massive damage to her, but in exchange, she can't really hurt us. So that's something, I guess. We Ember her a bunch of times, and then we call it a win. Once we have Pokeballs, we go and make our first capture on the route to the west of Oldale Town. Not that it will help us much in the short term, to be sure. We capture a Lotad at the second attempt, the first one going badly when it got burned up with Ember, but after hooking Pokeballs at it without weakening it, we're successful the second time and nickname it Lillipod. Again, I cannot use this until level 13 when she learns a beauty move. It's not going to help much with Roxanne, given that the move is Nature Power, but at least we do have a way to fight with her. But yeah, I do some switch training to gain her 10 levels as we battle on. On the subject of Lillipod, it's not long before she evolves into Lombre, which might make us a little bit more resilient when it comes to the Roxanne fight if I use her. Nature Power uses a different move depending on the terrain, and it turns into Swift when in a building. Why couldn't we have fought her on sandy terrain when it turns into Earthquake? Dravid also evolves into Combusken shortly afterwards, and so we are a little more tooled up than we usually are for the first gym in Hoenn. With Lillipod at level 16 and Dravid at level 18, I decide to make a try on Roxanne and see how we do. At least we do resist rock-type moves with Dravid, so that is something. We use a bunch of Embers on the first Geodude, knocking it down to red health, where we get her to waste one of her potions before we repeat the whole process and wear it down once again. Her Rock Tomb doesn't do too much damage when it hits. Once again, we have to repeat the process with the second Geodude, wearing it down with our Ember attacks, but again, we get her to waste her potion. Dravid drops into yellow health, nearly red, before we do take it down with a flurry of Embers. When Nosepass comes out, I switch into Lillipod and start to soften it up with Nature Power come Swift attacks, peppering it with them for 1 to 2 hit points at a time, all while it does land tackles and Rock Tombs, even buffing its defences with Harden. The purpose of Lillipod's time here isn't to win, but to soften it up. Nosepass can be a pretty big obstacle, and I need to use every resource I can. I throw a lot, and I mean a lot of swifts at it. There are plenty of times when she could have gone for the kill and put the hurt on, but instead choosing to go for harden, which means that we get to live for another hit. Some of her moves missed too because, Rock Tomb. We keep going and eventually we get a crit that drops it into yellow health and gets the nose pass to eat the berry. Sure, we do go down eventually, but this whole thing was never about winning. Lillipod did her job. When Dravid comes back out to face off with nose pass, the first ember doesn't do much damage, which isn't good. We do get the burn though, which is better, and then it misses Rock Tomb. Suddenly, things are looking up. Another ember, and she makes the choice to go for block. The burn damage takes her into red health before we finish the nose pass off. Very nice. Before we can leave Rustborough and head for Dewford, there's a May fight, and given she has Torkoal, this could be awkward. Dravid faces Torkoal and we hit it with an ember while she calls for curse. And then we ember again, and then she curses again, and then we ember again, and then she curses again. This goes on for about 5 turns until finally we take it out without her landing a hit. I bet she's really cursed now about not attacking. When Lillipod comes out to face Mudkip, she goes to bide and I want to feel her out, so I switch back into Dravid and back to Lillipod to waste the attack before hammering her with a trio of nature power comes swift attacks that put her down, even as she goes to bide again. We do just about enough damage so it's not a problem, but if Mudkip had survived that last attack, there'd have been trouble. We have the fight with Brawley next and I head to face him. I think it might be a similar strategy to Roxanne at the moment. Use Dravid to take out his first few team members, then get Lillipod to soften up his ace before Combusken comes back in for the kill. First 2/3 of the fight goes absolutely grand as we 2-hit match up with Ember while it only goes to bulk up, which does nothing to protect it from our fireball. That was easy enough. Meditite, we 1-hit crit with an Ember, but it's not good because it means he still has potions going into Makahita. Lillipod faces it and lands 2 swifts, but thanks to a bulk up, it can very quickly take us out with a pair of vital throws, which sends our Lombre crashing down. Definitely not good. When Dravid comes back in, the embers do some damage, but not a lot due to the fact that I believe it has Thick Fat as an ability. Worse, it keeps bulking up and the first vital throw hits us for half our health. When I need a burn, I don't get it and it takes us out very quickly. That wasn't even close to being close to a win for us. I head off to Slateport, curious about getting a new Pokemon, but I discover something. I originally planned to use Roselia in this game because it gets Magical Leaf and Petal Dance, 2 beauty moves. But you cannot catch Roselia in Emerald, which is annoying. I decide to try the May fight now instead of going for another round versus Brawley. I can catch something on Route 117, but I need to beat May first to get there. Dravid faces Lombre and I take it down with 2 Ember attacks, which is handy because that can be annoying. We just get hit with Nature Power in exchange. Marshtomp is next and I swap into Lillipod to get hit with Mudshot, which doesn't do much damage. Bide is next though and we clatter it with a Swift, but I swap back into Dravid and hit it with an Ember. We do survive the unleashing of energy, but not by much, as Lillipod has to come back in and take it down with some more Swift attacks. Thankfully, it does resort to using water gun attacks, which we quad resist, so not a problem. Lillipod also finishes off the Slugma at the end with some Nature Power turned Swift attacks for the win. I work something out. I catch an Oddish and nickname her Clump. I can't even use her to attack until level 39, but it's not a bad option now that I've researched it. It gives me a chance to use a Pokemon I don't think I've ever used before. And no, that Pokemon is not Oddish, by the way. Anyway, I decide to head back and give Brawley another try, now I've got some levels. Dravid comes out when the battle begins and puts Machop on red health with Ember. We get tagged with a Karate Chop, but when he heals it, I go for Bulk Up to make us more resistant to physical moves. Another 2 Embers take it down. Another Ember, 1 hits Meditite, meaning that we don't have to worry about that. I start to Ember Makahita and it starts using Bulk Up a bunch of times, which is kinda worrying. If I think he's going to use a potion, I will drop another Bulk Up. It's kinda worrying just how little damage our fire moves do. He eats the berry, we keep on dropping embers on it, and with it in mid-yellow health, one of our embers crits, and we finally drop the Makahita hard, which is a relief. Back to Moorville next, and a face-off with Watson. Due to some power levelling on Clump with the experience share, Dravid is getting pretty strong. I thought Fury Cutter was a beauty move for some reason, but no, so that's not happening. I just fling Dravid versus Watson and hope for the best. This is a close fight, even with the level gap. Voltorb is a 2-hit with Ember, going for a shockwave that does meagre damage, but we have taken a hit. Electrike, we can free hit, thanks to him dropping a potion on it, when it narrowly does survive our first Ember. We don't get attacked though, so that is a good thing. Magneton, normally his biggest problem, goes down to a Soul Ember thanks to being Steel type, before we have to face off with Manectric. I drop a few embers on it before deciding to switch up and send in Lillipod to face off with it to hammer it with some nature power come swift attacks. We do get him to heal it, forcing Manectric to use the berry and Watson to use his last potion before we have to start the beatdown all over again. Lillipod does go down to repeated shockwaves which do decent damage, and finally the final blow, a quick attack, lands. Dravid comes back out and lands some embers. Thankfully, we do get a crit that leaves it weak. Manectric lands a shockwave that puts us in red health, but we do take it down with a final blow for the win. While doing some training to the east of Falaba town, mainly to get Clump into battling condition, Dravid evolves into Blaziken and he now almost has a full moveset. We'll still get walled by anything that has flash fire, but meh, I can't get a new capture until after the next gym when I get desert access. But now, the next major fight is versus Maxi on Mount Chimney. He rants about his plan before I send Dravid out to face off with him. Given Clump and Lillipod aren't entirely useful at the moment, Dravid is getting a lot of combat. Mightyena gets floored out with Blaze Kick, a special move in this game, not physical so we don't get debilitated by Intimidate, even though it has the word kick in the title. We miss 2 Blaze Kicks on Camerupt before the third takes it down with a crit, before the Zubat, his final Pokemon, goes down to Ember. Moving on then, let's go face off with the next gym. Flannery is going to be awkward, I can already tell. I wish that we got Surf for Lillipod before this, but we're not going to be that lucky, alas. Clump, even if it did know an attacking move, would be useless here. So, I guess it's up to Dravid to fight fire with fire. I get the Charcoal to help with this. I make a bad error in this fight. Versus Numel, we miss Blaze Kick and get hit with Tackle before we do take it out at the second attempt. On Slugma though, I go for Ember instead of Blaze Kick because I figure we're safe. It is a Slugma after all, before it poisons us with Smog and then puts Light Screen up and she heals it. So we take a ton of damage, wrecking its health again and waiting for the Light Screen to fade. The said Light Screen does fade during the second turn of the fight with Camerupt, but she heals that as well. And by the time Dravid takes Camerupt down, the poison damage does take us down too. Lillipod does fight Torkoal, but we can't really hurt it. It certainly does a lot of damage to us, taking us down with 2 body slams, sandwiching and overheat. That did not go to plan. It's okay, I know where I went wrong. I decide to strengthen my team, going and getting Clump to level 39 so we can get Petal Dance and finally evolve her into Gloom. If I'd evolved her earlier, I'd have had to wait a few more levels to get Petal Dance. Maybe we can score a decent hit on Torkoal with it. It does give us another option in the fight. Not a good one, but it is better than nothing I suppose. I want to get a few more levels for Lillipod as well while I'm here. It's not long before we make another attempt and I think as long as we avoid poison this time we should be good. This second time does go a whole lot smoother. Dravid takes a run up and Blaze Kicks Numel high up into the roof of the gym, before on the next round we promptly do the same to Slugma. We're already doing better. Camerupt survives Blaze Kick but goes for Sunny Day, which really wasn't advisable as our fire moves just got boosted and we finish it with Ember. I land a Blaze Kick on Torkoal for big damage just outside healing range by the looks of it, and this is where things start to fall down. We get hit with Attract and 2 body slams as we fail attack due to love. Forget the tale of forbidden love between Romeo and Juliet. This is the story of a bipedal chicken man and a lava turtle. I switch out when the sun fades and I go into Clump, who does tank a body slam from Torkoal, and then we outspeed it and end it with a Petal Dance. Boom! Before going to the normal gym, I head over to the desert and go look for my next capture, and eventually I find one and capture it. A Baltoy, who I nickname Talby. There's no theme with these nicknames, I'll add. Mind you, I have thought about doing a challenge with Baltoy, so let's see how it does. We actually start with 2 beautiful moves in Psybeam and Self-Destruct, so that's cool. I also get an Ice Beam TM to teach to Lillipod. We get Surf after the next gym, so that will make her more useful. Now then, Norman. Since Lillipod has an actual proper move now, we send her out first and she lands an Ice Beam on Spinder, getting the freeze with the first blast before the second one downs it. Versus Vigoroth, we also 2-hit it with Ice Beam, but we do get tagged with a Facade and a Slash. Linoon is faster, and although we land an Ice Beam, it takes us down with Slash and Headbutt. Dravid comes out and revenge kills it with Ember. Slacking is last, and the first thing we do is go for a Bulk Up, just in case counter comes our way. I figure I will attack on the truant turns. We get hit with Yawn and fall asleep, but not before we hit a Blaze Kick that does massive damage, forcing it to eat the berry that takes it out of healing range, thankfully. While we're asleep, we do get hit with a Facade, but we wake up in time to end it with Ember. The next major fight is the rival one outside the Weather Institute, and I have a feeling this one might not be even close, you know. I'm not going for a full team of 6, I have one more Pokemon in mind, but I won't be able to get it for a few more towns yet. Talby also evolves into Claydol on the road there, so we've got a bit more power behind us. I want Ice Beam for Talby too, might be useful down the line. I throw out Talby to face Lombre and we 3-hit it with Psybeam, getting tagged by an Absorb which gets some of its health back, and a Nature Power turns Swift. We also take Slugma out with Psybeam before I swap out for Clump to tackle Marsh Stomp, and although we get hit with a takedown, we murder it with Petal Dance for the win. Moving on then. Next is the Flying Gym, and given of our team only Talby isn't weak to the Flying type, this could be interesting indeed. I wish I'd had enough money to get another Ice Beam TM, but oh well, it'll come in time. Regarding Dravid's level, he's carried us for the first bit of the game, but I can see him getting less useful as time goes by. Lillipod goes first and knocks Swablu out with Ice Beam. Pelipper is next, and I know Protect is coming, so we crash a Swift against the barrier with Nature Power before 2-hitting it with Ice Beam. Thankfully, it misses Supersonic. Versus Skarmory, we 2-hit it with Surf, but do get smoked a Mighty Blow with Aerial Ace. Ouch! Tropius is a 1-hit with Ice Beam, as might be expected, before Altaria is last. Now it does outspeed us, but it just goes for Dragon Dance, and we duly shoot it down out of the sky with Ice Beam. Good job, Lillipod. We get to Lilycove City and do the final rival fight in the game. I do what I did last time and send Talby in first. Unfortunately here, her first Pokemon is Tropius, and it knows a grass move, which isn't good for our health. We exchanged a Psybeam with a Magical Leaf, and then I swap in for Lillipod, who downs it with Ice Beam. 3 Ice Beams are enough for Lombre to take down her evolved form in Ludicolo. We get a freeze on the second Ice Beam, and it becomes a matter of all she wrote. We also take Slugma down with Surf before the Marsh Stomp is last. I swap into Clump and we take a Mud Shot and Takedown before striking back with a Petal Dance to end May as a threat for the rest of this game. In Oras, you do fight the rival again, but not in this game. Next, after some exploring, we've got a fight with Maxi in the Magma hideout, and I have a strange feeling this one is not going to be a problem. It's perhaps not as smooth as it might be looking back in hindsight, but really, we're never in any danger. We hit Mightyena with Surf as Lillipod to weaken it. I know he's going to heal, so I switch into Dravid to finish it with Ember after our speed gets wrecked with Scary Face. Unfortunately, we don't quite get the knockout and get tagged with Swagger and Scary Face. Mightyena does take itself out with Takedown though. Camerupt is next, and although Dravid lands a Blaze Kick, it takes us down with Earthquake, which wasn't entirely unpredicted. It does give me a free switch back into Lillipod, who does take it out with Surf. Crobat hits Lombre with an Air Cutter, but we take it down with 2 Ice Beams, getting the freeze on the first one, which was definitely handy. There's story stuff now until we get to the Psychic Gym. I do a bit of surfing west of Lilycove City towards that gym, and this seems as good a time as any to start talking about what's going on in the channel. Let's Plays are the 2 Pokemon games that I'm playing on the Switch. Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX and Let's Go Pikachu are still uploading alternate weeks, still having fun with both of those. There's also Resident Evil 0 and Fable Anniversary episodes that are going up throughout the week as well. Some of them being played very badly at times, especially that latter one. Next week's Pokemon Challenge is a return to Gen 6 as we take on Pokemon Y once more and ask the question of whether or not I can beat it with just a single Croagunk. I'll talk more soon, but we enter Shoal Cave and capture a Sveal, which I nickname Balrus. This is probably going to be the final team member we use. I did toy with Volbeat or Altaria, but the moves we get probably aren't better than what we can already have access to. These 5 are probably my best options. In Moss Deep City, I acquire a Sunstone and set about evolving Clump into Blossom. Don't think I've ever used this before, if I'm honest. There might well be a good reason for this, but I make that choice. Clump might have to do a lot of heavy lifting at the end of the game versus Wallace. Balrus also evolves into Celio after I do some Macho Brace plus Defense EV training in Granite Cave. Now, I have used this line before. Did it in my semi-cancelled Pokemon Unbound playthrough. And many months ago, I took on this very game with just a single Sveal. It's some more time later and I do some special attack EV training to the east of Falaba town to evolve Balrus into Walrein. This gives me almost my final team. I've got one more evolution, but I can't get it until after the Psychic Gym. Speaking of, the fight with Tate and Liza is next, and normally this is absolutely brutal in Emerald, but here it's somewhat approaching a fair fight. And by that I mean I outnumber them 5-4. But hey, normally this is 4-on-1, so give a little, get a little. I have a plan, and it's cunning. Let's do this. I start with Talbot and Dravid. I know Dravid is going to get wrecked very quickly, but I taught him Sunny Day. Anyway, Talbot throws up Light Screen, and Dravid uses Sunny Day. Xatu goes for Calm Mind, and Claydol hits Earthquake. On the next turn, Xatu survives Dravid's Blaze Kick, and then finishes us off with Psychic. I bring Clump in, who has the Chlorophyll ability, so we get boosted speed in Sunlight. That was my plan. Tolby takes Xatu down with Ice Beam. Clump and Tolby conspire to revenge kill the Claydol, Petal Dance and Ice Beam, putting it down hard. Now it's Solrock and Lunatone versus my 2 Pokemon. One downside of the Sun is that Solrock knows Flamethrower and is prepared to use it, hitting Clump twice with the move, but despite the burn, she takes it like a champ and takes down both Lunatone and later the Solrock with Petal Dance. Tolby's Light Screen probably helped, and we even managed to get a bit more damage in on Solrock with an Ice Beam. And we're done with that gym. That was pretty easy. Next, I get Dive and head to the abandoned ship once again because there's a Water Stone here and I'm going to need that. It's time to evolve Lillipod and complete our team. After that, we've got the fight with Archie, and again, I'm not too worried. Versus Mightyena, we put the Hail up as Balrus and get hit with Scary Face. It misses Swagger and we go for Dive, giving it some chip damage off the Hail before critting it with said Dive to finish it off. Versus Crobat, we get clattered with a wing attack, but it doesn't do much before we hit it with Aurora Beam. It survives on red health, but the Hail finishes it off. Sharpedo is last, and the smart thing to do would be to switch into Clump. Instead, I hammer away with Ice Ball and Aurora Beam attacks, and this takes a very long time, especially as we get hit with a few Swaggers, meaning that we run the risk of hitting ourselves in confusion. Plus, what makes the fight go on even longer is the fact that he has super potions, so that's aggravating. The really smart thing to do, like I said, would be to switch, but we don't. Anyway, we do eventually take the victory. Next, after more story stuff, is the Water Gym, and I think Clump might need to pull a lot of weight here. Mind you, Lillipod quad resists water, so she might be able to do something too. The one and only shouldn't be too much trouble here. Those might well be our 2 main Pokemon when it comes to the champion fight too, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. The first 4 Pokemon are easy, as Clump eventually takes Love Disc out with Magical Leaf after getting confused, and then hit with Water Pulse. I swap into Balrus to face the Celio and to get rid of the confusion. We go for Ice Ball, an Ice-type version of Rollout that does eventually take it out after a lot, and I do mean a lot of turns. Mind you, it is not the longest fight of this match. Whiscash hits Balrus with an Earthquake, but goes down to 2 Aurora Beams thanks to being part Ground type. Crawdont is next. We do get tagged with some blows, but I go into another Ice Ball sequence, hitting it with 3 rounds of it to take that thing down. I think this is going to be good because it means if we can hit the Kingdra, then we'll do massive damage to it. It doesn't work out in practice though, as Kingdra wrecks my entire team thanks to it using the double team strategy, and we miss so many moves. It takes Walrus down. It's faster than Clump, who does have an attack that never misses in Magical Leaf, but we get frozen with Ice Beam, and as a result, we cannot do anything. Lillipod has the same issue, hitting some Swifts, but they don't do much damage, and it also has Rest, which is really aggravating. Lillipod eventually goes down to a series of Ice Beams. Dravid puts the Sunny Day up, and Tolby goes for Light Screen, which means we drag the fight out for a long time, but we never get close to knocking it out, as just too many of our blows miss. But eventually, after a valiant effort, Tolby goes down and we can't Light Screen anymore, and Dravid goes down soon after to Water Pulse. Let me try this again. I have a better plan. I think I need to get Clump faster than Kingdra, which means I need Sunny Day. The rematch is painful. Love Disc hits Clump with Water Pulse but doesn't get the confusion, meaning that we can take it out. We also take Celio out with Clump due to being not confused this time, but this forces Juan to bring Kingdra out early, which isn't good. Now, I'm not showing this in its entirety due to the fact that the fight with Kingdra was easily over 10 minutes long, but the Cliff Notes version is that I had to get it to waste its Ice Beams throughout the fight, so that it couldn't easily defeat Clump. It spammed a load of double teams, and although Talby's Psybeam and Balrus's Aurora Beam did do a lot of damage, the fact that they only hit 1 time out of 5 wasn't good. Just had to anticipate what move he was going to use and switch into something that could take it. Given Lillipod quad resists water and Balrus quad resists ice, I tried to switch them in for Ludicolo to take any water pulse attacks and Balrus to take any ice beams. Add Talby's light screens into the equation and we managed to do okay. I did miscalculate when I thought he had run out of ice beams and Clump nearly got wiped out, but thanks to Moonlight we did manage to recover health a bunch of times, which would have seen us fall without it. We do eventually take Kingdra out with 3 magical leaves before Clump screams the defiant song of the victorious and wipes out Whiscash with another magical leaf and Crawdont too, meaning that we do get the final badge. I did not anticipate Juan being as bad as that. In Victory Road, we've got to fight Wally, and I'm trying to remember what Pokemon he starts with. I've done how many challenges in this game? I look at an old script and believe that it's Altaria, so I begin with Talby. Ice Beam shoots down the Altaria, and he's got 4 left. Next, he sends in Roselia, that thing I wanted to use originally, before I hit an Ice Beam on it. It survives and goes for Leech Seed, even though I finish it with Psybeam. When he sends out Delcatty, I withdraw for Lillipod and it lands an assist, hitting us with Screech. I take it out with Surf before the Magneton is next, and I do exactly the same thing there, knocking it out with Surf. Last is Gardevoir. I go for a Nature Power, which turns into Shadow Ball and it goes for Future Sight, before we take it down with another Nature Power comes Shadow Ball. It takes a bit, but we do get to the Pokemon League and here's our team and our stats. Tolby and Balrus are at level 53, Lillipod, Clump and Dravid are at level 55. We've got a decent array of moves, albeit not much coverage. Hopefully, what we've got can drag us through. I wouldn't mind a bit more coverage versus water types though. Take your guesses on whether or not we can do this at this level with this team now! Dark type trainer Sydney is up first. I decide to begin with Lillipod as I figure she'll do fine versus most of Sydney's team. I mean, it's not like we have to really worry about the Intimidate unless we start flinging Swifts around from Nature Power. Anyway, Mighty Ina goes down to a single Surf, which is handy. Absol is next, and unfortunately, it just survives Surf, meaning we've got to use another Power Point in pressure conditions. Thankfully, the Berry takes it out of healing range. Shiftry survives Ice Beam and goes for double team before he heals it. The second Ice Beam puts it back in red health, and we finish it with Nature Power. Cacturn goes down to Ice Beam before Crawdont is last, and I swap in for Clump, who takes it down with Petal Dance, even as it uses Swords Dance. Whew, easy, we win the dance off. Next is Phoebe, and I have a plan. Her Dusclops always begins with Protect, so I start with Balrus in this fight because we did learn Blizzard earlier on. I'm not a big fan of the move because of the accuracy. If only we had a way to ensure it hits every time. Oh wait, we totally have a way to ensure it hits every time. Oh, it misses. Oh, that mechanic doesn't work in Gen 3. Blizzard only bypassed accuracy checks in Hail in Gen 4. Nuts. We do take Dusclops down eventually, but lose a lot of PP doing it through Aurora Beam and Dive thanks to her spamming Protect. Walrus also takes the first bayonet down, but we get struck with Thunderbolt, which doesn't do a lot for our general state of health. Aurora Beam doesn't do much damage to the second Dusclops, but we do manage to land a Blizzard to take it down. We also manage to take the second bayonet out, but get burned through Will-O-Wisp in the process, which just puts us on a timer. Still, Phoebe can be downright irritating as a fight, and the fact that Walrus took 4 of her Pokemon down is handy. Burn damage takes us down versus Sableye, but Dravid comes in and Blaze kicks it out of the competition, giving us the win. Next up is the fight with Glacia, and I'm already considering strategies. I figure it's risky, but I go with Clump up top. I'll need Blossom to take the Celio out easily, but it'll probably trigger one of the Glalie, meaning I'll have to switch into Dravid most likely. I'm proven wrong. We take the Celio out with Petal Dance, and she goes immediately for a second Celio. We also take that one out, but Confusion afflicts us as the Walrein comes out, so I switch into Lillipod and hammer a couple of nature powers into the Walrein as she lands Ice Beams. It drops us into yellow health, so I switch into Walrus and hit a few dives. She starts going for surf attacks, which hit us through dive, which isn't good. It's a stalemate really. Neither Walrein is capable of really hurting the other one, so we just trade blows until we drop Glaciers into yellow health, and then I switch back into Clump, who tanks a surf and then ends it with Magical Leaf. When Glalie comes out, we go into Dravid, tank an Ice Beam with ease, and then end it with Blaze Kick. The second Glalie comes out and doesn't do any sort of better. We knock it down hard, and that gives us the victory. Dragon Trainer Drake is next. I'm worried because he also has a Kingdra, and we saw how irritating that was earlier when we fought Juan. Would you actually believe Flygon was the thing which caused most havoc? I begin with Walrus, put Hail Up versus Shelgon while it protects, and then, when we get an opening, I blast it with Aurora Beam to end it. Salamence is next, which surprises me. I expected Kingdra. It hits us with Rock Slide, but his Flinch Gambit fails as we get an Aurora Beam off, which takes it down. Altaria also goes down to Aurora Beam before he finally sends Kingdra out, but 2 Aurora Beams, the first one a lucky crit, take it out. His Flygon comes out and takes Walrus out with Earthquake before we can Aurora Beam it out of existence. I send Tolby in since it hasn't had much chance to fight, and we get tagged with Flamethrower before our Ice Beam lands. He heals it, I fire a Psybeam at it, we get hit with Dragon Breath before the next attack, and Ice Beam finally brings it down. Just the champion left then, and I do need to be careful here. Wallace can be tricky. Healed up and ready to fight, we storm out to face him. I begin with Lillipod. I figure she might have the best chance of navigating versus Wailord, who can be an unpredictable opponent. Plus, if he wants to put the rain up with Rain Dance, it will help our ability. I think the other two who I need to be careful of are Gyarados and Tentacruel. We don't have a good answer to either of them. So, Lillipod does go down to Wailord. We're just not strong enough to overcome it, even with hitting Surf and Hydro Pump attacks. We do decent damage, but getting pounded by double edge attacks just isn't good for our health. Nature Power, forget it. It does absolutely the best part of nothing to it. So that's not good. Dravid comes out and throws up Sunny Day. We hit a Blaze Kick that wipes out most of its health, all while it lands weakened Water Spouts on us while weak. It tries Rain Dance, so we have to put the sun back up, even though there's a misclick somewhere in this fight, and I try to put Sunny Day up twice in a row. We do take Wailord down. We do take the rest of his team down, all the way to Milotic. That's where we're simply too weak to put up much of a fight. Clump is slower than Milotic, it knows Ice Beam, and despite my best efforts, we just fall so agonisingly short of victory. So, I guess we go again. I do some grinding, getting half my team up to about the level 60 mark, mainly Lillipod, Tolby and Clump. Walrus and Dravid do end up being left behind a little bit, but hopefully this is enough. If Tolby comes up against Milotic, I might have a little surprise for it, but there's so many ways this can go. With Wailord out first, I go for Clump with intent to Petal Dance. Wailord is just that bit too bulky to go down to that move and manages to land a Blizzard because, of course, it hits. This fight does go so different this time, but the general gist is that we still lose. It's good to know their Explosion is powerful enough to take Milotic out, but I think it's very much a last resort move if I'm honest. Tentacruel is the one that ends us this time, thanks to Clump being unable to hurt it very much. Third attempt, and we'll see how this one does. Again, we get to the final Pokemon, the Gyarados in this instance, and it's just too much for us. It downs a poisoned clump with Hyper Beam after Dragon Dancing. This isn't working. I can keep levelling or I can go down a different route. So, earlier in the game, I caught a Volbeat, nicknamed Fireflu, and I think it might be time to bring in a new team member. At the very least, it might help out versus Ludicolo. We get Signal Beam, so if I can power up, then I think we've got a reasonable chance of dealing some good damage. So then, the grind board. I take my Volbeat all the way up to level 61, and then I fight my way back to Wallace. Somewhat approaching a little more confidence this time. At the very least, it gives me another tactical option. We begin with Clump versus Wailord, and when the big Pokemon comes out, we one-hit it with Petal Dance. Can you imagine a Dynamaxed Wailord? That's just hit me. Wallace sends my Milotic out next, and we do massive damage with Petal Dance, but not before Toxic hits us. Even after Milotic eats the berry, the third Petal Dance, and that is a massive stroke of luck, puts it down for the count. Tentacruel is next, and I switch into Tolby. We get poisoned with Sludge Bomb and hit with a Hydro Pump before putting Light Screen up. Tolby isn't going to survive another hit, so I go for Explosion and we move first, wiping Tentacruel out. I go into Fireflu next, gambling that he'll send Ludicolo out, and he promptly does, which is lucky. We 2-hit Ludicolo with Signal Beam, despite its best efforts to avoid the move with Double Team. Whiscash is next, and I was going to Tail Glow and use Water Pulse, but it goes for Amnesia, so instead I fire a bunch of Signal Beams at it until it finally goes down. Gyarados is last. We fire a +2 special attack boosted Water Pulse at it for a fraction of its health, and it ends Fireflu with Hyper Beam. Hey, Volbeat pulled some right weight in that fight. I send Lillipod in, and we fire a barrage of Ice Beams at it, shrugging an Earthquake off from Gyarados before we do get the freeze, which ends Gyarados as a threat, and we take it down. We win the fight, we enter the Hall of Fame. I breathe a huge sigh of relief at that. Now, normally we would, but I'm not doing the Stephen Stone fight. We are too underleveled, and I don't have the time to level everyone up to the point where we could reasonably match him. Plus, I'd have to drop someone from my team to have a Waterfall HM slave in there. So, with that, I think it's time to call the run over. Well, that was more fun than I thought it'd be. I hope you enjoyed the run. I figured it might be something different. It's definitely one of the more eclectic teams I've ever used. I don't think I've ever used a Blossom, a Claydol or a Volbeat before, so that was different. I'd definitely consider doing this with a different contest type, just to see what sort of different experiences we could get. I suppose it was probable that Wallace would be awkward. I didn't figure out though just how annoying Juan would be. I will say that team runs in Emerald do feel harder than team runs in Fire Red, just my experience. If you did enjoy the run, don't forget to like and subscribe, ring the bell to get the alerts, it helps my channel grow. Down in the description of the video, there's links to all my YouTube playlists, to my Twitter and to my Discord. Come join in on the community. If you have any ideas for future Pokemon challenges, then drop them in the comments section or said Discord/Twitter. Join me again next week for another Pokemon challenge as we head to Carlos and ask the question of whether or not I can beat Pokemon Y with just a single Croagunk. That one is sure to be interesting. What's going on with me then? The new dog is settling in nice. She's turning out to be a right little rascal. I was recording the audio for this video earlier. I turned around and she was sat on the windowsill. This is not a wide platform either. It's maybe about 4 inches wide, and somehow she'd managed to get herself perched onto it with a goofy expression. Yeah, she's definitely settling in nicely. Professionally, I've got a lot of stuff going on. A lot of interesting times ahead. Personally, yeah, life's good. Summer's coming to a close, or at least what passes for summer where I live, and autumn approaches. So, yeah, cooler nights, warmer clothes. Sounds good. I like this time of year. I'm definitely looking forward to what's upcoming on the channel over the next couple of months, so it's sure to be exciting times. Tell your friends, tell your family. Getting on the ground floor where it's fun. That way you can say, I was here first. You are probably fed up of listening to me go on now, so I am going to call time on this video. Thanks again for watching, folks. This has been Pokemon Emerald using just beautiful condition contest moves. This has been Once and Future Gamer, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye now.